Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean of Pennsylvania, an impeachment manager during Trump's second impeachment trial and a member of the Judiciary Committee. Also with us, Anna Palmer, founder and CEO of Punchbowl News, and David Plouffe, former Obama campaign manager and an MSNBC political analyst. Congresswoman Dean, let's start with you. I would love your reaction. You have been in the trenches as the Congress has tried to hold President Trump accountable. Now this insurrection that he birthed. What is your reaction to what has happened today, both to Speaker Pelosi rejecting some of McCarthy's picks, and then the response by McCarthy to pull out the football and go home and say that the Republicans will no longer participate?
Well, Senator, it's an honor to be with you today. So, Claire, thank you for inviting me. Today was an important day, and I support the Speaker's decision. She did the right thing. This is a very serious matter, and it requires serious people. We know that the two whom she disqualified had really literally disqualified themselves in their words, their votes, and their actions. So I fully support the Speaker's decision. Mr. McCarthy, of course, he's lost all credibility. He deputized one of his members to come up with the independent commission, which of course we did, and the Speaker did agree to that, and then he pulled the rug out from under him. Today, as you say, I thought the exact same thing. He's taking his ball and going home. He never wanted to participate in this investigation of the truth and the facts. It's about patriotism. It is not about politics. It's about truth over lies and cover-ups. So the Speaker made the right decision. The Select Committee will go on without them. We will get at the facts and the truth.
Anna, take us behind the scenes here. It certainly looks like, after listening to Liz Cheney on the steps of the Capitol, that she and Pelosi are certainly marching lockstep at this point. Was she engaged in making this decision? Was she involved and consulted in making this decision? And what really pushed Pelosi to say, hey, we're not going to let Jordan and Banks in this committee room?
I think it's important to understand that Liz Cheney certainly doesn't speak for Republicans or Kevin McCarthy. She's so out of step with where the House Republican Conference is at this point. The important thing, I think it was a stunning decision by Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The fact that Jim Jordan and Jim Banks were nominated by Kevin McCarthy to be on this was not surprising. It's something that we had been talking about and reporting on for weeks. The fact, though, that she basically was saying, you know, we are not going to have this turn into just a political witch hunt, a back and forth partisanship. I think that when I've been talking to Republicans today, though, they say that in some ways Pelosi really played into the hand of Kevin McCarthy, because by the fact that she decided that they weren't going to be able to be on this committee, now it allows Kevin McCarthy to continue to say that this is just partisanship at its worst. Whether or not it is, I'm not saying that to be true. I think you're going to see that talking point come forward quite a bit with Republicans in the coming days.
You know, it's interesting because, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, what's really fascinating about this is that Kevin McCarthy ran into a brick wall today, but it's a brick wall he built. I mean, he and Mitch McConnell decided to tank a truly bipartisan commission. The only reason Nancy Pelosi had the power she used today is because Kevin McCarthy gave it to her. What about the whole issue around Banks and his trip to the border and the talk that he was appearing in photographs with people who participated in the insurrection? Do you think that weighed in terms of the outrage of other members that pushed Pelosi to this?
Of course. I think when you look at both Mr. Banks and you look at Jim Jordan and the statements they've made and the vote that they took following January 6th, they clearly, on the Democratic side, didn't feel like they could be two members who really wanted to get to the truth. I think, obviously, Nancy Pelosi had strong support among her caucus to take this action. She doesn't do things like this lightly. I think the bigger question is going to be really the role that Liz Cheney plays, because she's so key to this. Because Liz Cheney was named by Nancy Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi doesn't need Kevin McCarthy here. She did need him to have that bipartisan commission go forward, to have the kind of, you know, fair, same number of Republicans as Democrats on the committee. This time, because Kevin McCarthy said they weren't going to do it, it's almost he kind of made his bed here, and Nancy Pelosi is saying, great, we have a Republican, we have a quorum, we're going to move forward.
You know, David, a lot of the Republicans may be saying today that this plays into McCarthy's hand, Pelosi rejecting these members, because now they can just write off this committee as partisan. On the other hand, for his politics, what's your take on how this impacts him going forward? I mean, they're going to have the videotape. He's going to have, you know, people just ranting and raving. They don't really have witnesses that would play into any talking points they're going to put forward. Is this, and he's not going to have any insight into what the committee's doing now. No one's going to be telling him what's going on in terms of the investigation within the committee. Has he made a mistake not replacing these two members with other Trump loyalists?
Yeah, I think in the long run, Claire, let's talk about 2022. You've run an off-year elections. So I think pretty much every swing voter in every competitive Senate and House seat was revolted by what happened on January 6th and wants it to be investigated. And I think the Democrats can say, we gave them multiple opportunities to try and investigate this. They won't, because many of them were complicit in an insurrection and would-be assassinations. So I think this is like, if you look at what's happening in our country today, you know, we've got a climate crisis that's every day we're reminded is spiraling out of control, hurting lives, hurting our economy. You've got so many unvaccinated people out there, largely because Republicans are afraid to say it's safe, although we're starting to see some progress there. And then you've got people trying to suggest that January 6th was just a bunch of tourists at the Capitol. So on all these three fundamental issues, you've got this echo chamber that the Republicans create them for themselves on Fox News and on Breitbart and Sinclair. They're a happy little place where they think that's how the rest of the world views things. It's how their base views things. It's not how a lot of Republicans view things, and it's really not how the rest of the country views things. So yeah, I think the politics is, I'm a Democrat. I'm also reminded, Claire, you know this better than anybody. One operating principle for Republicans in Washington is they don't think Democrats will be tough enough. You know, we'll always take the off-ramp. And Nancy Pelosi did the right thing today. And you can see them howling because they didn't expect it. But I think the politics of this, I would argue in the short term, but certainly in the medium to long term, I think are terrible for, you know, Kevin McCarthy, who makes Jell-O seem firm in his, you know, faithfulness to the Constitution. Because again, the talking point back is easy. They don't want to investigate it. They had many opportunities to do it because they're afraid about what's going to be found. That many of them instigated and organized and supported in it and are still lying about what really happened on January 6th.
Yeah, and David, as you know, visual is so powerful in the world of politics. Visual is powerful. Let's, you know, a week after the insurrection on January 13th, Kevin McCarthy spoke out. Let's listen to what he said on January 13th, within days of when those police officers were attacked by Trump supporters.
That doesn't mean the president is free from fault. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
So, Jell-O in full display, somebody who can't decide what his beliefs are, where he really stands. And by the way, Liz Cheney had really strong words about him today as to whether or not he would deserve to be Speaker of the House were the Republicans to be successful in the midterms. She had some very plain words to say about that.
McCarthy, of course, wants to become Speaker next year. Do you think that he deserves to be Speaker in the aftermath of his actions here?
I think that any person who would be third in line to the presidency must demonstrate a commitment to the Constitution and a commitment to the rule of law, and Minority Leader McCarthy has not done that.
Congresswoman Dean, how is McCarthy viewed within your House of Representatives by his fellow Republicans? I know that there is obviously critical mass of people who are afraid of Donald Trump, him being one of them, but is there anyone that you talk to on the Republican side of the aisle that is embarrassed by the hypocrisy that he has demonstrated in this whole incident?
Well, I really won't speak for the Republican conference, except they have buoyed up this failed leader. He is, in that one clip that you played, and that was days after the insurrection, he showed some firmness, some resolve. And since then, he has liquefied into no resolve, no firmness. So he's a really failed leader. I think this will backfire on him terribly. But much more important to me is that the American people deserve better. Not just the Republican conference. The American people deserve a leader who stood by his own words and said, we must get to the bottom of this. The president bears responsibility. But this leader speaks out of both sides of his mouth. Obviously, he's concerned much more with his own political future. I want to remind people, I mean, January 6th was like no other day. When the speaker today in her statement said this is an unprecedented decision based on an unprecedented time, I was there in the Capitol during the insurrection. We were taken out with gas masks. We were held, and I had the chance to talk to Liz Cheney when we were held for hours in a safe room, while hundreds were being beaten, while more than 100 police officers were seriously injured, while 5 people wound up losing their lives. And Mrs. Sicknick, if you remember, in her grief, went to the Senate, went to leaders to say, please investigate this with the independent commission. So the sniveling of Leader McCarthy and the saying he'll set up a new commission is really actually just a cover-up. What is he afraid of learning about the truth and the facts of what led to January the 6th? What happened on January the 6th? What did the president do and what did he fail to do? What did others do to either aid or abet this? What's he afraid of? Because what I'm afraid of is that we will not learn from this and we will have history repeat itself. Our democracy is at stake here, and Leader McCarthy needs to get out of the way.
And I believe the American people are on the side of Nancy Pelosi here. We have polling from CBS that says that 72% of people say there's more to learn about the attack. And then we have 67% saying that the attack on January 6th was trying to overturn the election. 56% said it was an insurrection. And then you've got the folks down there, the Trump folks that are listening to the echo chamber, the 31% that it was all about defending freedom and patriotism. But big majorities, David Plouffe, and Anna, politically speaking, that are all for getting to the bottom of what happened and learning everything we can learn about that frightening day for the United States of America. What do you think, Anna, the impact of these, Anna and David, I'm sorry, I'll go to Anna first. Anna, what do you think the impact of this polling is going to have on the messaging war that now has been kicked off today in a major way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it lays out strongly the reason why Nancy Pelosi wants us to move forward, why she felt like she was pushed. She wanted this bipartisan commission, and that was, she was unable to get the Republicans to agree to that. The bigger thing, I think, going forward, which is going to be very hard for Kevin McCarthy, is once these hearings get underway, it's going to be wall-to-wall coverage. That is going to dominate the entire political conversation, and they're not going to have a single Republican there on the dais to push back against anything. You know, what's going to happen when potentially, you know, Mark Meadows is called to testify, other big figures that may not have that White House privilege. You know, this is going to be the political moment for the next several weeks and months, and Republicans aren't going to have a say there. And I think that's going to be something we'll have to look back and see, how does McCarthy try to figure out how he can push back on it when they aren't participating in the process.
With that in mind, David, can the Democrats go too far here? Can they push too hard in terms of subpoenas and demanding testimony from elected officials? Could they lose the American people on this?
No, I mean, I think they should be as aggressive as they can on process, hear from everybody they think they need to hear from, not put too much spin on the ball. So ask questions, present video, and get the facts out there. And at the end of the day, yeah, I think McCarthy clearly, I mean, Claire, you just showed those poll numbers. There's very few issues in America that enjoy over 70% support. This is one of them. McCarthy's suggesting that we basically forget it ever happened and we don't want to look at it, appealing to the hardcore MAGA base. And a lot of his members are more concerned about losing primaries than a general election. But I think Anna's right. I mean, I think this is going to be clips bouncing around social media. You'll see enormous television coverage, print coverage. And as long as the Democrats play it straight, which I think is an easy thing to do, and just be aggressive about getting the right witnesses there. I don't think they'll pay any price by being aggressive about trying to secure witnesses. But, I think there should be very few speeches, just a lot of questions, and let the story get more deeply told here. And to your point about the power of visuals, you can't escape the visuals. Even Kevin McCarthy's speech there, he seems like a different person than he does today. No. And listen, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you don't care about politics. This was a seminal day in American history. Our democracy remains under attack. That day is one of the significant roots in the soil that leaves us in this vulnerable position. So we have to find out what happened, who is responsible. And again, I think there's going to be a lot of members of Congress in the Republican conference that don't want their role exposed here. And that may be at the heart of a lot of the resistance here.
Congresswoman Madeline Dean, thank you so much for being with us. And Anna Palmer, as always, thank you for starting us off. David Plouffe, lucky for us, is staying with us. When we come back, Republicans stoking the flames of misinformation as the states and districts they live in